Many people ask me how I became a monk, and I thought I'd explain in a small video on how that happened. So there are a few things that happened in order for me to make the decision for me to become a monk. The first was quitting my job. Uh, when I was a layperson, I was a computer programmer, and I was brought into a project called the Advia 120. It was a blood machine made by Bayer Diagnostics, the aspirin company. And now they're owned by Siemens. In any case, this was a human blood machine. I worked there for 3 years as a contractor, and they had released a product for human blood, and at the same time, they were making another machine for multi-species blood, and this would be able to test, dogs, cats, and horses, cattle. And it was brought to my attention that this machine was also used for hamsters, rats, and mice, and rabbits and monkeys. And these are animals used for animal laboratory testing. At that time, I was a vegetarian, and a fellow vegetarian brought that to my attention, and I decided that I had to leave. There's a whole series of events with that happened. I ended up giving 6 months' notice. I quit my job, and I bought a ticket to go all the way to Australia from America, halfway around the world. And I had decided that maybe I could become a monk. Maybe I could, I really wanted to become a monk. I really was into Buddhism, and I was aspiring to be a monk. And I had already asked my parents before I left if I could have permission. They said no. But anyways, I still wanted to do that. But it was just a possibility. And I had wanted to become a monk many, many times, but I just wasn't able to get myself to do that. Now, one of the key factors was actually just leaving my job, packing up my stuff, and just literally owning what I could carry on my back. In the beginning, that was a lot of stuff, and then I slowly slimmed down what I was carrying, and that was another factor, to just live with less and to travel and be a nomad. And so that was one of the major points where I was on my way to becoming a monk. And I was a very serious Buddhist at that time. And I was also a vegetarian. That's why I quit my job. And I was spending a lot of time in Hawaii. My original plan was to volunteer at meditation centers and travel around the world and volunteer, meditate, and travel to another country, volunteer, meditate, and travel to another country. But somehow in Hawaii, I was not able to do that. And there was one meditation center that was really small, and it wasn't possible to volunteer there. So I ended up having a lot of fun in Hawaii, and as I did that, my Buddhist path, started to fall down. And then after some time, about I think 5 months of living in Hawaii, and living on the beach and having fun, I decided to go to another island, Fiji. And I was living on the beach and having fun. And as I was doing that, again, I was meditating less and less and less. Now, when I would meditate, I had a watch. I had a watch that had a countdown timer, and it had an alarm. It helped me wake up early when I was in the monasteries and looking at prospective places to ordain in the first part of my trip, and waking up early. And I had a countdown timer for my meditations. And I still recommend people to time their meditations and to have some type of countdown timer. Now, at that time, I used a watch for that, not because it was more portable and I wanted to have less things, but we didn't have telephones at that time. We had these like they were really big at that time, and they were really expensive to use. I had one for, I don't know, maybe a week. I sent it back to the company because it was like $1.50 a minute to use. To call my own phone while I'm in my own house cost $1.50. So that's how things were back then. Obviously, I'm not going to take one traveling with me. So I had this watch. I used it for meditation, and I wasn't meditating. I was meditating very little. I was still meditating, but just very little. And when I was in Fiji, I was with two German girls who are backpackers. We're all travelers, and we all stay at backpacker places. And we were in the ocean, and we're playing a game. I don't recommend doing this at all, but we were playing a game in the ocean to pretend that a shark was eating us alive, like we're actors in the movie Jaws. And somehow, when I was waving my hands for help, and I was like underwater and getting pulled underwater by an imaginary shark, I had lost my watch, and I didn't know it until a few hours later. In Fiji, they have a tea time, and I looked at my wrist to find out when tea time would be, or how much more time was remaining for tea time. And I noticed my watch was disappeared, and I immediately grabbed a snorkel and mask, and I started swimming around where I was before. But it was 3 hours later, and it was an open beach, and it was just impossible to find that watch. So later that night, it was just starting to get dark, and it was low tide, and I thought maybe I could find my watch, and I'm trying to find my watch, and it's starting to get dark, and I even offered to pay some kids if they found my watch, some money, and they were looking for a while, but they gave up, and then it got dark. And so that night I was thinking about how I had all these aspirations to become a monk, and how serious of a Buddhist I was before the trip, and at the very beginning of the trip, and that's dwindled away, and I wasn't using the watch like I had originally intended to use it. I bought it right before the trip, actually, and it was it just wasn't getting used for the purpose of meditation, being a Buddhist, and a lot of the things a lot of the ideals were pretty much gone. And so I felt that night I was trying to sleep, and I was thinking about that whole purpose of my trip and everything, and how I just didn't deserve the watch, and the watch was gone. And I woke up early that morning, and for Fiji, that was sunrise. That's early for Fiji. And I walked out to the beach, and I was living on the beach. I was living in a tent on the beach. And I walked out to the beach, and I thought about, I still had this thought in my mind about my aspirations to become a monk, and how I couldn't do it. And I thought about how impossible it would be to find my watch that has been in the ocean for a good half of the day and the whole night, the entire night, and then back in the early morning again, and how impossible it would be to find my watch after all that time in the ocean. And I'm thinking this very, very quickly. The mind is very fast, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to try to find my watch, and it's impossible to do, it's impossible to find. And if I find my watch, I will definitely become a monk. I won't be playing any more games. I won't be delaying things and making excuses. I would just definitely do it. And it was a very quick thought in my mind as I was walking out to the beach. And then almost instantly, really far away, I could see it had to have been maybe 50 meters, maybe. It was over 100 feet away, and I could see something in the ocean. Immediately after making that sort of half-conscious determination or promise, I immediately saw something flapping in the waves and in the very shallow part of the waves. And I went closer and closer and closer to it. And at first it looked like a piece of seaweed or something. And as I got closer to it, I could see that it was my watch. And the waves were very calm in the morning, and they're just, flapping, flapping, flapping. And my watch was half buried in the sand. And it was, the strap was floating. It was a Velcro strap, and it was floating, and it was flapping in the waves. And as the wave would pass over it, push forward, like a layer of sand would cover the face of the watch. And as the wave would pull back, a layer of sand would show the watch. And so I'm looking at my watch, and I'm looking at the sand cover it and pull back, and the waves going, and I'm just staring at it, and I'm just like, oh, did I make some promise or something like that? And I'm just looking at it, and I'm just I sort of felt like, I don't know, the universe sort of caught me or pinned me down, and I picked up the watch. It was almost like a contract at that stage. And I picked up the watch, and I just held it in my hand, and I still remember very clearly just looking at my hand, the watch in my hand, and I'm just like, yeah, this is what I'll have to do, and so that is my watch story, and that is also a little bit of the history about when I was a layperson and working, and the series of events that caused me to want to become a monk and also to fulfill that promise. And but the main reason is actually I just started reading. I started reading the suttas, and started reading the Buddhist words and meditating, and that gradually grew. And then I found myself, I couldn't work anymore because there were ethical reasons working. And then I found out that, and then I, slowly detached from the world. And then I made that promise, and that was how I became a monk today. It's been a good promise that I made so far.